So this behavior of yours, إِنَّ ذَلِكُمْ كَانَ يُؤْذِي النَّبِيِّ. You're wasting your time by staying back and talking aimlessly. This behavior of yours hurts the Prophet ﷺ. And it also hurts the Prophet ﷺ because you're in his house, preventing him from doing what he wants to do. Interfering in his privacy, preventing him from carrying on with his work. You're disrupting his privacy. Your bad etiquette. You're being inconsiderate of others. This hurts him. إِنَّ ذَلِكُمْ كَانَ يُؤْذِي النَّبِيَّ. And if you notice, a Nabi has been mentioned. The Prophet ﷺ has been mentioned. His title has been mentioned to show that how can you hurt him? How could you cause him distress? How could you do anything to annoy him? And when you annoy him, فَيَسْتَحْيِي مِنْكُمْ. He feels shy from you. يَسْتَحْيِي ha ya ya. Istihya. And what does istihya mean? To have shyness, to feel shy. And out of that shyness, be unable to say something, be unable to do something. So فَيَسْتَحْيِي مِنْكُمْ. He feels shy from you, because of which he would never tell you to leave. You ate, and you're sitting, talking away. But because the Prophet ﷺ is very shy, he would never ever tell you, go home now please. Because he had very good akhlaq. إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. The Prophet ﷺ was akramun nas, the most generous of people, the most noble of all people. And a person who is generous and noble, he will never ever treat his guests with disrespect. He would never tell his guests, please leave now. فَيَسْتَحْيِي مِنْكُمْ. He feels shy from you. So even though he is getting distressed, even though he's hurt, even though he's annoyed, even though you're disrupting his privacy, he cannot carry on with his work because of you, he will not tell you to leave. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَسْتَحْيِي مِنَ الْحَقِّ. But Allah, He does not feel shy from truth. He never refrains from speaking the truth. لَا يَسْتَحْيِي مِنَ الْحَقِّ. This is why Allah tells you to leave after eating. Allah tells you that فَإِذَا طَعِمْتُمْ فَانْتَشِرُوا, because Allah does not feel shy. Now, this ayah, as I mentioned to you, was revealed with regards to a particular context, a particular incident that took place. Remember that Surah Al-Ahzab, some of the ayat are about the marriage of the Prophet ﷺ with Zainab radhiyallahu anha. It is recorded in Al-Bukhari that Anas ibn Malik radhiyallahu anhu, he said that the Prophet ﷺ married Zainab bin Jahsh with a wedding feast of meat and bread. So what did he have to serve to the people? The walima. What was the menu? Meat and bread. Simple. Two things. Meat and bread. And he was a prophet of Allah. It does not have to be a lavish dinner. It does not have to be a very lavish menu. That you have multiple meats. You have chicken and you have fish and you have beef and you have lamb and you have goat and you have every type of meat that's possibly eaten in your culture. You have everything. This is not necessary. Even one type of meat is sufficient. And in fact, having different types of meat in the same plate, in the same meal, is something that is disliked. Because this is a sign of kibr. This was a part of arrogance previously. I remember somebody was telling me that the Mughals in India, they used to have this particular dish that was prepared only for the king. Only the king would eat it. And what was it? That the chef, he would boil an egg and he would put it in the quail, and the quail would be put in the chicken, and the chicken would be put in the in a goat or a lamb or something, and that would be cooked together. And who would eat it? Only the king. Nobody else but the king. Because different meats you have, right? And different meats on the same table, on the same plate, in the same meal, is a sign of kibr, is a sign of greatness, that look, we can afford so much meat, so much variety. And sometimes, unfortunately, at weddings, this has become the tradition, that you have to have every type of food. Now, it's good that you're trying to entertain as many people as possible. You want to make them comfortable, that whatever they like, they can eat. However, you also have to see what you can afford, what you are able to offer, and offer the food that will be consumed. Not so much food that will be wasted. So, we see that the Prophet ﷺ, what did he have on his walima? Meat and bread, two things. So Anas radiallahu anhu, he was told to invite people to the feast. Remember that he was a young boy who would serve the Prophet ﷺ? So he was told to go and invite the people to the feast. And some people came and ate and they left. Then another group came and ate and left. And Anas radiallahu anhu said that I invited people until there was no one left to invite. So he went around Medina, inviting people, come and eat. The thing is that when you have too much food, then you have to pay a lot, isn't it? Each plate costs a lot of money, which restricts the number of people that you can invite. Isn't it so? Think about it. It does. It restricts the number of people that you can invite. However, if you have a simple menu, good food, simple menu, then can you invite more people? Definitely you can invite more people. And the more people you invite, the more happy they are. Think about it. All those people who come to your wedding, who have come to your wedding, or who've come to your sister's or brother's wedding or something like that, weren't they happy that you invited them? And if by chance you forgot one person, you just happened to forget them, do they still remind you till today? Perhaps they do. So if you have a simple basic menu, you can afford to invite more people. The Prophet ﷺ, he sent Anas radiallahu anhu, who went around the streets of Medina looking for people. Have you eaten? Have you eaten? And he kept on sending people who kept on eating and leaving. And then he went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, I cannot find anyone else to invite. That's it. I cannot find anyone else to invite. So then the Prophet ﷺ told him, take away the food. And you take the food and distribute it or eat it yourself. And he said that there were 3 people left who were talking in the house. 3 people, they stayed in the house, and what were they doing? They were talking. And the Prophet ﷺ, he went out until he came to the apartment of Aisha radiallahu anha. Because this feast was where? In the house of Zainab radiallahu anha. And where was she? In her house. The new bride, she's in her house, but because of these people, the Prophet ﷺ cannot go to her, cannot be with her, cannot have privacy with her. So the Prophet ﷺ, to hint to the people, what did he do? He left them. He went to Aisha radiallahu anha's house, her apartment, and he said, Assalamu alaikum ahlal bayt wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And she said, and upon you be peace and the mercy of Allah. How did you find your new wife, O Messenger of Allah? And the Prophet ﷺ went around to the apartments of all of his wives, and he spoke with them just as he had spoken with Aisha radiallahu anha. And they asked him the same question just as she had asked him. Now imagine all of them he went to. Each and every single one of them he visited. And when he came back, the people were still talking in the house. Those 3 people were still sitting. And the Prophet ﷺ was extremely shy. So he went out and headed towards Aisha radiallahu anha's apartment again. He was so shy, he didn't say anything to them. He left again. And then after some time, those 3 people left. And then Anas radiallahu anhu, he went and told the Prophet ﷺ that those 3 men have left. So then he went to Zainab radiallahu anha. So just imagine, the people, what did they do? Those 3 men, they stayed in the house, they're talking and talking and talking. The food was served, so many people came and ate, the food was wrapped up even, it was sent out, it was sent away even, but still they didn't get it. And they were sitting and talking, that so much time was taken. The Prophet ﷺ, he was hurt, he was shy, he was harmed, but he didn't say anything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says over here, إِنَّ ذَلِكُمْ كَانَ يُؤْذِي النَّبِيَّ فَيَسْتَحْيِي مِنْكُمْ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَسْتَحْيِي مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Allah does not shy from the truth. This is why He's telling you, leave after you have eaten. Now, what do we learn from this? What are the various etiquettes that we learn when visiting other people's houses, when meeting other people for certain occasions? What do we learn? If you think about it, people get together for various purposes. Isn't it so? Especially when there's food. Like for instance, when do people get together? At what occasions? Eid. Okay, what else? Weddings. What else? Iftar. That sometimes, like for example, when it comes to iftar, if you have to invite someone, then you have to have multiple course meal, right? You have to have the appetizers, then you have to have the main meal, and then you have to have the dessert, and you have to have the tea. Now think about it. You're fasting, the host is also fasting. Isn't it so? And for them to prepare all that food, isn't it going to take time for them? Of course it will. Isn't it going to affect their ibadah? Of course. Will they be able to go for tarawih? Will they be? Think about it. When they're exhausted after serving you, will they be able to go? No. The thing is that we've made our culture such that we have to have lavish amount of food. We have to have a lot of variety. And it has to be served in a particular way at a particular time, in which we complicate our lives. So much time is spent on this, which could be spent on other necessary, more important things. Right? So people get together for various purposes, and this ayah tells us that when we go to somebody's house or to any place that somebody's invited us, how should we go? First of all, what do we learn from this ayah? Only go when invited. Because sometimes it happens that we hear that, oh, so-and-so is having a party. So-and-so is calling people over. Let me just go as well. If they've invited you, only then go. And if you happen to have been invited, but you have some people with you and you would like to take them with you, then what should you do? Seek permission from the host first. Because it's quite possible you are in a situation where you have to take those people along with you. So in that case, seek the permission of the host. So first of all, go invited only. Secondly, what do we learn from this ayah? Arrive on time. Do not go too early and do not go late. Rather, go on time. Because if a person goes as an uninvited guest, and if he goes late or if he goes early, then he is definitely going to cause inconvenience to the host. Isn't it? And that occasion which was supposed to bring happiness may bring a lot of distress to the host. Isn't it? That was to bring you closer together is perhaps going to create distance between the two of you. So, go on time. What else do we learn from this ayah? If you're going otherwise to somebody's house, you haven't been invited, but you want to go for some work of yours, some business of yours, when should you go? At a time when people are not eating. Okay. Now, you were invited, you went on time. After that, what do we learn? Eat and be concerned about leaving. Now, whether this is a wedding, or somebody's house, or a party at an institute, any place, what should we be concerned about? Eating and leaving. Because sometimes what happens? If we eat and stay there, hanging around, then the people, they have to wrap up, they have to close the place. And sometimes at weddings, what happens? People don't leave, and the management is getting so worked up that when will they leave so that we can close? And sometimes literally on some invitations it has been said 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. When it says 9 p.m., then you should be concerned about leaving by 9 p.m. What else do we learn? That once you've eaten, then don't stay back for talking. The thing is that you have been invited to somebody's house and they served you food, you've eaten, whatever you had to talk about, you've spoken about that already. Now, at the time of leaving, you should seek permission from the host. Okay? You should seek permission from the host. Now, I should get going. May I leave now? It doesn't mean that you just get up and walk out. You should definitely seek permission from them because it's a part of observing good etiquette. And you don't have to say, okay, should I go now? Do you have anything else? Don't do anything like that. Don't say anything like that. Just say that, alhamdulillah, we've eaten. Now we should get going. You also have work to do. We should also do something important. Jazakallah khair for inviting us. And continue. If they want you to stay, that's different. Like I mentioned to you, that if the schedule is such that you were served food first and you're expected to stay afterwards, that's different. But sometimes the host just says out of takalluf, making it difficult upon themselves, out of pretension, that pretending to be good, that no, don't go right now, let's sit, let's talk. But think about it, if you have something important to do, will you be able to sit and hang out and talk endlessly? Will you be? You will not be able to. You see, a believer is a purposeful person. He has a purpose in his life. He cannot spend 5, 6, 8 hours on just one party. No, it's impossible. The party is about what? Just having food. You went, you ate, okay, now get to some work. Do something now. How can you spend half your day, all of your day in just one occasion, one party? This is not correct. So even if somebody's stopping you, don't go, don't go, don't go. Maybe they're just saying it out of courtesy. But you should show your concern about leaving. And you should put yourself in the shoes of the host. Think about it. They have been preparing. They have been working. And when you leave, they have to do the work as well. And if they want you to stay, they mean it, stay. But if you can see the fatigue on their faces, then get going. It depends on who's telling you to stay, because sometimes the men say, oh, sit, sit, sit. And the women, they're worried about wrapping up. So it really depends on who's telling you to stay. And if you do happen to stay behind, you may offer to help them wrap up. And one thing that we should be very careful about is that sometimes, people invite you for food. Don't go start commenting on the food endlessly. Because sometimes people keep commenting on the food. They keep talking about the food, making the host so conscious that they're wondering what's wrong, what did I do wrong, is it okay? Already they're so worried. Maybe they've cooked that particular food the first time. So don't comment endlessly. Just say, Alhamdulillah, good food, and that's it. And sometimes, not just during the party, but even after the party, what do people do? They talk about the food, they will write about it, they will tweet about it, post something on the internet about it, telling the whole world about what they ate and what they didn't like and what they liked. Good thing you want to tell the people, but only share good things. One more thing that we learn from this is that if the guest is told that eat and leave, then what should the host do? They should also spend less time in preparing the food. Because sometimes the whole day is spent in just preparing the food. And when you have spent the whole day in preparing the food, then you want the guests to stay for a very long time. Isn't it? If you look at it, the Prophet ﷺ, who was he? An extremely busy person. Wasn't he? He had a big family, a huge responsibility. And could he entertain so many people for so long? Was it possible for him? No. And many times what happens, that people who are important, people love to spend time with them. People love to talk to them. People love to go to their house and see what they're doing and speak to them and talk to them. But the thing is that it's quite possible that you trying to sit with them and talk to them, you're wasting their time sometimes. Right? In the sense that you're talking to them about things that are not as important and they have a lot of work to do. You yourself must have experienced this. That since you've started this course, you have your lesson to do, you have your assignment to do, you have your readings to do. And if people come and they start talking to you or they talk to you on the phone, what do you want? Hang up quickly. Isn't it? And you only want to talk about things that are important and necessary, and that's it. So, إِنَّ ذَلِكُمْ كَانَ يُؤْذِي النَّبِيَّ. It hurts the Prophet ﷺ. He was a busy person. He had many important things to do. So if a person is concerned about his time himself, then he will also be concerned about the time of other people. Isn't it so? Now one more thing about talking at gatherings, at parties, at other people's houses. Typically what happens? People are eating and they're talking, or after eating they're sitting and talking. And who do people typically talk to? Those whom they know only. And if there's a person whom they do not know, they will not even greet them. They will not even look at them. They will not even speak to them. Whereas, how should a person be? He should speak to everybody. Right? Sometimes people go and sit completely isolated, as if they had a fight with someone. That they're sitting all by themselves, eating quietly, sitting quietly, not talking to anyone. This is also inappropriate. You have been called to a social event. Why? To socialize. Not to become antisocial over there. So when you've been invited to socialize with people, then you should socialize with people. Sit amongst people, with people. Talk to them. And don't just talk to certain people, but talk to everybody. Similarly, don't just sit in one place, but try sitting in different places. You understand? Like for instance, one time you go get your food, you go get a drink for yourself, go sit in one place. You go get some bread for yourself, go sit in another place. You might find out so much potential in people around you. You might, make new friends, make new connections, benefit people, or you might benefit from them. So these events are not just for eating. What are they for? Socializing as well. And sometimes what happens is that one person who you do not know most of the people do not know what happens. They get completely neglected, completely ignored. It's amazing how sometimes, let's say if a girl gets married, she's been invited by some family friends from her in-laws. She goes there, she doesn't know anybody, and all the people, they're sitting and talking, and the daughter-in-law, the new bride, she doesn't know who to talk to or what to talk about, and she's sitting isolated, silent, quiet, and everybody's busy in their own conversations. And what was the party about? The new bride. Who was ignored? She was ignored. Isn't it so? Many times this happens. This is also inappropriate. So, when a person has been invited to such a gathering, what's the objective? Socialization. And when you socialize with people, be moderate. Don't be excessive that you don't want to leave. And don't go to another extreme that you don't talk to anybody, or you only talk to people that you know. So, Wallahu la yastahi min al-haq. Allah, He does not shy away from the truth. This is why He has given us these rulings, these teachings, these etiquettes. And we have to observe them. وَإِذَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُنَّ. And when you ask them, when you ask who? The wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When you have to ask them about what? Mata'an, about some goods, about some benefit. The word mata' applies to anything that is useful. It can apply to clothes, it can apply to money, it can apply to food, it can apply to utensils, equipment, tools, different things. Anything that is useful. So the Sahaba are being addressed that if you have to ask the wives of the Prophet ﷺ for some mata', meaning something that you need, something you wish to borrow, something you wish to ask about, then how should you ask? In what way? فَاسْأَلُوهُنَّ. Then you should ask them مِنْ وَرَاءِ حِجَابٍ. From behind a veil. Meaning from behind a curtain. From behind a screen. In the first part of the ayah, what has been mentioned? When you're invited to the house of the Prophet ﷺ for an occasion. Now this part of the ayah talks about you're not invited. You're not invited. There's no event. There's no special occasion. But you have a question to ask one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. You wish to borrow something from them. You need something from them. So when you go and ask, how should you ask? From behind a screen. From behind a curtain. Meaning there should be a partition between you and them. There should be a partition between you and them. This hijab, remember, because hijab is used for a screen, a veil, something that prevents people on either side from seeing one another. You understand? A hijab is like a curtain. When you have a curtain, if you're on one side, can you see the other side? No. The person on the other side, can they see you? No, they cannot see you. So the purpose of this hijab is what? Segregation. Okay? It is to screen off. This hijab over here does not mean that they should be wearing a khimar. They should be wearing a headscarf. They should have their face covered. Or they should be wearing a jilbab. This hijab does not mean this. Hijab over here means literally a curtain. And what does this indicate? Segregation. That even if you have to ask them about something, don't ask directly face to face. How should you ask? From behind a veil. Meaning there should be segregation. ذَلِكُمْ. That, O you all, أَطْهَرُ is purer, it is cleaner, لِقُلُوبِكُمْ for your hearts, وَقُلُوبِهِنَّ and also their hearts. What is pure for your hearts and for their hearts? Having segregation, having a screen between you and them. Remember that the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, whenever they would go out after the revelation of this ayah, they would go out, for instance, in a hawdaj. What's a hawdaj? Like a small, something that's put on a camel, in which a woman would sit in so that she's veiled from all sides. You understand? So whenever they would travel in something like this. They wouldn't just sit on the camel or the horse and be wearing a jilbab and a niqab or something like that. No, they would be literally sitting in that. And after the revelation of this ayah, screens were put, curtains were put at the doors of their houses. So that if somebody had to ask something, they couldn't look inside. And if the wives of the Prophet ﷺ were talking to the men who were outside, there was still segregation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that ذَلِكُمْ أَطْهَرُ لِقُلُوبِكُمْ وَقُلُوبِهِنْ. It hasn't been said don't talk to them. It hasn't been said you're not allowed to ask them. What has been said? When you do ask them, make sure there is segregation. And the reason behind this is because it is pure for your hearts and also for their hearts. Who does kum refer to? The Sahaba, those who are asking. Who are the Sahaba? Those people of this ummah who had the purest of hearts. Isn't it so? Their hearts were the cleanest. If you compare the heart of any Sahabi to the heart of any person today, whose heart is cleaner? Whose heart is pure? Their heart. The hearts of the Sahaba. رَضِيَ anhum. وَقُلُوبِهِنْ. Who does hin refer to? The azwaj mutahharat. Those who are being asked, those who are being questioned. And again, these women were the most chaste of all women. If you compare the wives of the Prophet ﷺ with any other woman, who is more chaste? Who is more chaste? The azwaj al-mutahharat. Who are more righteous? Who are more pious? The azwaj al-mutahharat.